I'm going to bring tonight's town council meeting to order, December 21st, 7 o'clock. First item on the agenda. First couple things I want to do. Brian Morrison will not be with us tonight. He cut his finger and went to have it looked at. Might need stitches, so he was going to do that. Item 5, therefore, will be eliminated and continued to the next workshop, which is January 18th. And George, you can go ahead with the first item, discussion on water standpipe locations on the Durham side of town.
Where's Jim?
On the standpipe locations on Durham side, I wanted to ask that that be moved to the January workshop because there's other things we need to look into, such as maybe putting a tank up on the hill next to the existing tank, and running the 16-inch line through town to Durham side. That might be better than putting a tank on Durham side and having to pump it all the time. So I've been in contact with Underwood to give me a price to look at that, because I don't know, I don't really think we want to get involved in maintenance of pumps if we don't need to.
Okay, so basically, he just wants to do some more research and bring that other option to us
Can I
also.
just ask a question?
Sure.
I'm not even sure what a water sandpipe is.
It's a water tank. It's
Water tower.
the tank.
Tower we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Right, the tank.
Okay.
I didn't know either, Dana, don't
Yeah.
feel bad.
No, I was like, what is a water sandpipe? I thought maybe the birds were in it. Sandpipers?
Okay, is the council all right? Oh, go ahead, Brian.
George, I just had a question. So, if we need to do a 16-inch pipe, we don't have that currently through any of the downtown.
No, but phase two project would bring it through town, and then we could continue it from there.
So we were planning to do a 16-inch pipe in phase 2 regardless? Or would we have
Yes.
to change those plans?
I think we would, what I want to do is look at it with, I'm getting a price from Underwood to take a quick look at it for, just a 3 or 4 page report on what the volumes and pressures would be if we increased that line to 16-inch all the way to the Durham side by Houghton's, to see if that would give us increased flows. That way we wouldn't have to maintain a pump system for the rest of our, forever.
Okay, and then one thing to think about is, are the estimates or the funding amounts in the bond that we're going to use for this enough? Because Exeter's quotes in the paper were so much higher.
They may not be enough for putting a tank over there, period. Plus all the other, when you put a tank, you always have some kind of modifications to the system that you're going to have to make. So I don't think there's enough money in there, truthfully, myself.
Okay.
Those estimates are old.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll continue it to January 18th
Thank you.
workshop. Okay, next item is discussion on the artificial aquifer recharge groundwater exploration. And tonight we have Peter Garrett with us from Emery and Garrett Groundwater. We also have John Brooks in the blue shirt. And from Underwood Engineering, we have Michael Metcalf, who's here tonight. And you guys can go ahead, start.
No, I don't. I'm just going to briefly kick this off. As you heard, I'm Mike Metcalf with Underwood Engineers. We teamed with Emery and Garrett Groundwater Incorporated to answer your request on looking into artificial recharge for the Plains Aquifer in which both the Bennett and the Sewell well are located. The bulk of the work is groundwater investigation, which is what Emery and Garrett specializes in. Therefore, we teamed with them. As we were going through that process, the town also added on the groundwater exploration work to look throughout the town to see if you could find additional groundwater resources, and they are natural at doing that. That's their business. So as far as Underwood Engineers is concerned, we'll be involved with any evaluation and design of infrastructure, piping, pumps, intakes into the river, that aspect of it. All of the groundwater research and work is going to be done by Emery and Garrett, and they're going to present that to you now in a PowerPoint presentation. So I'll be here to answer questions with them at the end, but mostly you're going to be hearing from these two gentlemen. turn it over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much. How long have we got? How long do you want us to?
Oh, about 4 minutes. No, just kidding.
You can help me on this. I've pressed this function.
There you go, Peter.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so.
I think it's trying to catch up with the number of times you
Oh, I see.
press.
Well, anyway, here we are flashing. These are your 4 minutes going by. Here we are. You've heard all of these names except for the lower two, Tom Ballestero and Downey, that's what they're about, who will be helping us on this. Let me go on a little bit.
Do you need it? I'll shut the lid.
Something's pushing.
That's better than the flashing.
See if
Uh-oh.
Very odd. Just that one. Should I change slide? See what happens. Okay.
No,
Braid,
I can read pretty quickly.
if you don't mind just looking at a flashing screen, are you used to it, the TV or something at home? Anyway, Professor Vasudevan is at Bowdoin College. She's a chemist. She's an environmental chemist, and we've had her come along because there are some geochemical issues that we need to deal with on this thing.
I don't think this is
awful.
gonna work.
What are we gonna do?
Definitely gonna give me a mic.
Yeah, it
What's
is.
interesting is they didn't have the flash.
That's the problem.
You know, it's funny, we're looking at the TV screen here, it's not flashing to the people at home.
But I think it projects directly to
Oh,
it.
right.
The guy downstairs can switch it over,
Oh.
but still.
Oh, you were looking at,
Oh.
We have a mini TV here, so we can see if the TV's on.
There you go.
Oh, that's much
There we
better.
go.
there, now we got it. Okay, so, thank you, thanks very much, John. So, we've got, she's particularly curious about how organic and, organic compounds affect the mineral surfaces and one way or the other. And she's going to be doing some work for us a bit later, which I'm going to talk about. Another fellow, many of you may know him, Tom Ballestero. He's a professor over at UNH, and he knows a lot about this whole area. He designed, developed an Isinglass artificial recharge system over in Dover, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit. He's also done some work from the Lamprey River to Spruce Hole. I'm not going to talk about that, but that's another part that he's done. And he's done some work in Lee too. This is about our company, Emery and Garrett Groundwater. I'm the Garrett of that partnership, and we're experienced in hydrogeology of all different kinds. We have many New Hampshire clients. The closest is Portsmouth to the south, and UNH down over to the north, but these other towns as well. So let's move on. Underwood, you know them almost as well as we do. They have a long-term association out here in Newmarket, both water and wastewater. And Mike Metcalf has also been involved in your water treatment plant. Let's go to Dover, where they do have an artificial recharge site. This has been going on for 15 years, and it is actually the only place in New England where there's a permitted system for artificial recharge. They get the water from the river in another town, happens to be in Rochester, and it comes by a pipeline, about 4,000 feet of pipeline here, which goes to a recharge basin in a gravel pit. And there are two wells, this one here, and there's another one. What have I done now? I pressed the wrong button here. I think so. I won't press this anything now.
While they're doing that, does everybody understand what artificial recharge, what we're actually talking about here? We're talking about taking surface water and applying it to the aquifer in order to, if you don't do it, perhaps the aquifer can be pumped down if there's not enough natural recharge. So artificial recharge is to be pumping water from a surface water body and applying it into the ground, as you have done already in the past here.
Okay, so here's, yeah, thank you, Mike, for filling in there. So it turns out that these two wells were not doing too terribly well. And when they pumped water from the river over here into this recharge basin, then they could pump more out of these wells. And here's what that system looks like. First of all, this is where they get the water from the river. It's a little pipe which you can see in a concrete block here. The pipe goes into this manhole, is pumped out of the manhole by a pump which pumps it to 4,000 feet to this basin, which is a natural hollow in the sand and gravel landscape. And I went down into the hollow, and I'm going to take the next picture, which is down on the ground, and you can see that there's a lot of silt on top of the sand. I've just scraped away the sand here. What they do is they pump the water from the river. It's raw water from the river. They pump it onto that sand and gravel, and it soaks away. And every couple of years they have to take a front loader to take off the silt, and then it works better by next year. And their wells are in an active gravel pit around the corner here. At the Bennett well, this is what you see. There's a gravel pit very near to the well, and this has what was called an artificial recharge system here. The water went in some underground system, like septic system, 75 feet long, from this manhole here out to these pipes here. And it was used as a kind of operational system. In order to keep your treatment plant going, it was easier to keep it going day and night. So at night they bring it up here and they pump it onto this, to that gravel pit. And the well is very nearby, 300 or 400 feet away, and it looks like that. So we're considering how to go about bringing extra water to this aquifer. This well, by the way, was overpumped for many years, so that the water level was permanently at a low level, and this system is going to be able to bring some more water. So that first artificial recharge system didn't work too terribly well, because disinfection byproducts, sometimes abbreviated DVTs, were present in the water from the treatment plant, which was then pumped to the well. So it looked as if the disinfection byproducts, which are not supposed to be in the water, pumped from the well, probably came from that treatment plant water. They're not readily filtered out by the aquifer. So what do we have to do? We need to answer these questions in order to get a pilot test permit. So the constraints on the withdrawals from Lamprey River in Lee, I'll cover that. Bennett well system hydraulics, I'll cover that. Bennett well site geology, aquifer geochemistry, and permitting. Go into each of these. First off, it's this. This is down here in Newmarket. We're down in this area now. And the well is actually not here. I found out that it's actually across the border in Durham. Now, the closest point of the Lamprey River to the well is actually up here in Lee. So it's possible to have a pipeline coming overland from Lee, across, at the edge of this wetland here, across a little corner of Durham into the well here, which is actually in Durham. And then it would go in the normal pipelines that you've got down these roads. This is actually 0.7 of a mile long. this 1.4 miles would also, you could pump it from the Lamprey River here. And because this is so far preferable here, we're going to ask to work with the town to get a permit so that that is possible. At the moment, we don't know. So what about hydraulics? So we're going to look at historic data. At the moment, it looks as if during the first effort of artificial recharge that Bennett well, the maximum loading that they used was about 360 gallons per minute that was taken into that gravel pit. We think that we can get it up to easily over 1,000 gallons a minute pumped from the Lamprey River into that gravel pit. The water use in Newmarket, we're doing some evaluation on that. We need to also evaluate the water quality in the aquifer because of pumping river water onto this aquifer. We need to look at the precipitation data and the seasonal flow in Lamprey River. So just to give you some idea of what I'm talking about seasonal flow, this is from another river, the Jones River, happens to be down in Massachusetts. And this is a long period of record, 1966, all the way through till just about now. And each year there's a spike. There's a spring spike, and it's followed by a summer low. And we've just exaggerated and spread out this particular set here. And you'll see that this is a year from this line to this line here. You see in a normal year you get a spring flow in the river, which comes down and it's lowest in summer. And it comes up again in the fall, falls a little bit in the winter. There's a big spring flow here. These are normal years, and it should be fairly easy to pump water out of the Lamprey River in Lee and pump it onto that gravel pit to add water to the aquifer to service your well. But you have to plan for years like this where there wasn't much of a spring rise. And so that's why we need to have that historic data, because we need to plan ahead for you. Then there are geotechnical investigations to make sure that the area around that Bennett well is quite suitable. So we're going to do resistivity surveys to identify the geometry of that aquifer, borings for geotechnical data, permeability testing, preliminary groundwater flow modeling. All of those things we feel are necessary to make sure that the site's good. And here's an example of some geophysical surveys. Just to give you this lower one, this dark stuff is the bedrock, the lighter stuff is the saturated sands and gravels, and in this place we're actually looking for the deepest place in that sand and gravel to put a well. One of the ideas is to actually put in an additional well up there, such that pumping water from the river will get you enough to not only service the Bennett well, but also another well very nearby that will provide extra water for the town. And here's some geotechnical boring rig, that's the kind that we'll have up there. Then the geochemical testing, very necessary because organics as a general term are common in surface water. They can include algae and microorganisms, tannin and lignin and color. We want to make sure that that aquifer can actually filter out whatever the things are in that surface water. So these are most likely, but we want to make sure by doing this bench testing will be done at Bowdoin College. Then we do a pilot test permit applied to the DES. There will be water quality and water level monitoring in a plan. The rate will probably be a total of 27 million gallons per year pumped onto that aquifer from the river. So that should be sufficient to boost your water supply for the town. And then if they give us a permit, this would be for a pilot test, and this is what it would look like. You construct a recharge basin in the gravel pit, lay temporary overland piping, arrange for electrical connections and so on. Pilot testing. Pump water from the river to the recharge basin only during the spring and fall seasons, only when the water level is up high in the river. The idea is not to pump the river during low flow, because low flow, as I'm sure you've been hearing, just reading the papers, low flow is the time that we have to be kind of careful in the rivers. We're going to experiment with different flow and loading rates, monitor the water quality both in the river and the well, water levels in the aquifer, and monitor flow in the Lamprey River year-round. By the way, there's apparently a 70-year record in that Lamprey River, so this will just add to it. And then if the pilot testing is successful, we expect to be able to apply for a permanent permit, and in this case have a riverbed intake structure, not like what they have at Dover, but better than that. Actually, to reconstruct the bed of the river so that there's a perforated pipe in the bed of the river. You'd never know it was there, but it's able to pre-filter the water going into the gravel bed. Then, of course, the permanent pumping, piping, and monitoring, and source water protection, and startup operation and maintenance. All those kinds of things need to follow. The long-term goal here is to meet Newmarket's average day demand with the sewer well offline. Now, why the sewer well? Because it's your biggest well. So it's good engineering practice to have a system with enough water supply in it, such that even with your biggest well on offline, you can still serve the town. Now, this may be possible with artificial recharge alone. Maybe that some additional wells, bedrock wells or other sand and gravel wells in other parts of the town might be necessary. And for that reason, the town chose to make this a kind of a dual project. One is to deal with an existing well source, the Bennett well, for artificial recharge, and the other is to search around town for any additional supplies that you could develop either in the near future or the long-term future. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to you, John. Thank you.
I'd like to kind of give you a whirlwind tour through how we go about our exploration projects, and talk about a little bit at the beginning, just give you some background information on the differences between a bedrock aquifer and a sand and gravel aquifer, and then go through the process for each one of those very briefly, but to determine not only where we're going to do exploration, but what the safe yield would be from the different areas that we pick. This is just a block diagram, a schematic, and it shows you both a sand and gravel aquifer shown in the light green and dark green on the surface, and a bedrock aquifer shown in the blue colors on the side. And there are several characteristics of these aquifers that make them productive. One is the thickness of saturation, so that when you start pumping, you have enough drawdown capacity so that your well doesn't run dry. Also, you need coarse materials that are transmissive and can store enough groundwater so that it provides a safe yield, and also the lateral extent of the aquifer. So these three primary characteristics will guide our exploration project that we go through for the sand and gravel. When we get into the bedrock, basically bedrock is impermeable to groundwater flow, so you need to have some type of discontinuities within the rock, like fractures or discrete fracture zones. And in a lot of rock types, those occur in very discrete features. They can be linear, and they have to be thick enough and permeable enough to allow the groundwater flow to go through it and to store water. And to have interconnected fractures is an ideal situation because it increases the storage capacity of the aquifer and ultimately the safe yield. As you all know, the town has gone through some exploration programs before, looking for both sand and gravel and to a limited extent bedrock. And this figure shows the extent of In light green colors here are the glacial deposits that were laid down about 10,000 years ago, and they were the focus of the sand and gravel exploration programs. And in yellow and blue are the test wells that have been drilled as part of these programs, and they led to the installation and development and use of the Bennett well and Sewell well. And what we're hoping is that we can come in and reevaluate this data and perhaps find some aquifers that they haven't. And these may be deep aquifers that are beneath the surface, and they're difficult to find through surface exploration projects typically, but we have a few methods that might help us do that. And then there are some, the Pullet Brook well has been historically used not for groundwater supplies, but apparently as part of a infiltration treatment system in Pullet's Brook. And it's a 70-gallon per minute well. Also the Bodette well is located down here. I believe are on the order of 200 gallons per minute wells. So there's some evidence that there are high-yielding wells within this area, and that potentially we can find some more of those. What we do in the exploration project is to divide it up into a series of phases, and at the end of each phase we determine whether to go on to the next one. And so we present the results to the town and discuss our findings and our recommendations for continuing or not continuing. And we'll do this both for the sand and gravel and for the bedrock aquifers. And it may be that early on we decide one or the other of those probably will not be fruitful, and we'll continue on with the other one. So our phase one is to do a background data compilation, some geologic mapping within the limits of the town, and then we select within that sub-areas, which we call groundwater development zones, which would be the focus of our following phases of work. And some of the types of background data that we collect are the location of the water distribution system, which are shown here by these kind of globular lines. This is from the state GIS system. And we'll be also getting the GIS data that is available from the town, like property boundaries. We hope to get the distribution system and convert it into GIS, at least as a backdrop for our use. And so we look at infrastructure type features and socioeconomic features. We also gather information on potential contaminant threats to groundwater quality. And so it's mostly data from the EPA and from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the DES. And by looking at that, we can eliminate areas that have the potential for contamination. And we also gather existing well data from a variety of sources, including the DES and maybe local well drillers. And in the case of the sand and gravel exploration, we can use that data to look at the stratigraphy, the types of sediments that are below the surface, and also get some idea of the thickness of the aquifer and the potential for developing water. And we also collect any available geophysical data, which allows us to look in the subsurface as well. This is from a study up in Sebago Lake, and the USGS had done some waterborne seismic refraction work. And it shows, in this case, the bedrock in green and a buried deposit of coarse sand and gravel below fine deposits, which could be the type of situation we're looking for in our study here, where there are fine deposits at the surface that we could penetrate with our drilling and develop the underlying sand and gravel aquifer. And of course, we do some field mapping, and in the case of the sand and gravel exploration, what we're really trying to do is find coarse material. And this is a nice contact deposit. Usually, as this glacier melted and proceeded from south to north through this area, it would come to standstills and would become stagnant at times. And you'd have a lot of coarse material deposited close to it, and farther away, in this case within the ocean actually, that was in contact with the ice, you get finer deposits farther away from the glacier. So things like these buried stream beds, the stream channel, were developed, and that could be a viable aquifer, and these medium and coarse sand deposits formed farther from the glacier. And even farther away are these marine deposits, which underlie the surface most of this area. These are silty clays, which would be unfavorable for groundwater development. And then around the edge of the glacial deposits, the stratified drift are glacial till, which are very unfavorable. So we map these out, and again, we eliminate areas from further exploration. But then we also use that data to create a preliminary model that shows the bedrock, what type of deposits we expect to find, and we can propose well locations within the sand and gravel aquifer to test our model and to see if we can find productive material. Within the bedrock aquifer exploration, we also do geologic mapping. And in the case of this area, there are actually, let me go back one, there are three main formations that underlie this area. One is the Elliott Formation in green on both sides, the Kittery Formation in blue, and then a body called the Exeter Diorite, which is an old magmatic igneous type rock. And so we look at these rocks and we look for different characteristics, primary characteristics within the rock. How massive is it? Is there foliation within it? Are there different rock types that are interlayered? In the case of the diorite, it's a very homogeneous, massive type rock. In the Berwick Formation, I think you can see these folds within the rock, and they're outlying rocks of different compositions. So that would be more favorable generally for exploration. And then the Kittery Formation is called a quartzite, but again, it's an interlayered rock. Good parting along the bedding planes, which all help to make a good aquifer. We also looked at the actual characteristics of the structural discontinuities, like fractures, which we see here, vertical fractures within this body of Exeter Diorite, and also a kind of a gently inclined fault zone. You can see this black rock has actually been offset along it. So we document these in outcrop, and then we analyze that data. And of course, we're looking for regions that are like this, very highly fractured, and trying to avoid the poorly fractured regions of the rock. We also, after we're done with our, or I guess in concert with our field mapping and measurements in the field of these features, we can also do something called lineament analysis or fracture trace analysis, in which you look at different types of aerial photographs or different types of images of the Earth's surface and see if we can detect where these underlying fractures are. And the premise here is that if you have a highly fractured portion of the rock, it's more highly weathered, and erosion tends to take place along that, and then you see depressions on the surface that form linear features. And by tracing the surface feature, you can then hopefully pinpoint where the underlying fracture is. And we do this using a variety of platforms, such as topographic maps, aerial photographs, digital elevation models. I'd just like to show you a couple of them here to give you a flavor for that. This is a raised relief topographic map of the town, and you can see here one very distinct lineament that trends along Piscassic River,
Yeah.
and mapping in this the center portion of town show that there's a fault zone that's parallel, same orientation as that linear feature. So this will likely become one of our areas of focus down the road because the fault zone could be water bearing. This is a color infrared aerial photograph of the area. The town is labeled on there. And you can see in here these linear features, like down through here, here's some more. The river segments all have similar orientations. And those would all be lineament features that we trace. And then we digitize this data and put it into a computer as we trace it and analyze it a little later. We also create digital elevation models, which basically are elevation data from the USGS that we light by shining artificial light on it from different directions, and then it highlights features, different types of fracture sets. Here there's a very strong northeast trending fracture set in this data, as well as a northwest and northeast trend. And this shows the results of this county-wide study that we did in Georgia, and these are all of the lineaments that we traced on the DEM platforms. And then what we do is we look for areas where there are overlapping lineaments from the different platforms, and we identify those as coincident lineaments. And the interpretation is that these identify areas that are potentially underlain by water-bearing fracture zones or structural discontinuities. We also analyze the data in our computer program and create these contour maps, which essentially, of the lineament data, which essentially highlight areas, in this case in blue, where there are greater amount of intersections of the lineaments, where the length of the lineaments going through them are greater, and there's a higher density of the lineaments. So again, these would be focus points for our exploration projects in areas based on, depending on the geology, where we define groundwater development zones. We also collect well data for the bedrock. This shows the distribution of wells just north of us in the Durham area, and we can then look at the yield of the wells. The larger dots here are high-yielding wells over 425 GPM, and they range down to 0 or greater, 1 GPM. And then we can look at the variation, the lateral variation of high-yielding wells, and we can also compare it to the different rock types that those wells occur in, and it helps us define which one of the rock types in your area would be most favorable for groundwater development. By compiling all of this data, we then define within the town, smaller sub-areas, which are called groundwater development zones, and these will be the focus for our geophysical surveys that are done in phase 2. And these will be presented to the town at the end of phase 1, and it may be that there are 3 or 4 of the zones that we select that the town wants us to concentrate on for the following work based on the town's criteria. So the objective of the next phase is actually to locate where the wells are going to be, and we do that through the use of geophysical surveys, which we run along usually a series of parallel survey lines. And we'll be using 2 techniques, possibly 3. One is using this ENVI instrument, which measures the Earth's magnetic field, and also inflections in radio waves that propagate through the ground. And by looking at changes within the fields, both of these fields, we can target where our wells, our test well locations should be. We also use electrical resistivity, which Peter showed you some results from before. And basically this is accomplished by putting stainless steel stakes into the ground, connecting those to a long cable, and then sending an electrical current through the ground, which measures the resistivity of the subsurface. And these are the results. These represent really a cross-section through the earth. And this is where the location, that would be the topography of the bedrock on the ground surface. And as Peter explained this one already, this blue color is the unconsolidated material overlying bedrock. And in this case, there's unconsolidated sediments overlying bedrock, which is shown in the greens and the brown, but there's also this vertical area of lighter blues, which we are interpreting as a fracture zone and as a potential water-bearing zone. So that's the type of signature we would look for in our bedrock exploration, and it would allow us to select specific locations for our test wells. The other thing that we can do in the sand and gravel exploration is we take all of our well data and we take the results of our geophysical interpretations, the depth of bedrock interpretations, and we can create a 3-dimensional model, which this shows that basically the contour of the bedrock surface below the ground surface. This is important. On the ground surface, the sediments are 300 feet thick here, but we're able to see down to the bedrock. And in this case, it showed that there was a bedrock trough going beneath the delta complex that we were working in. And our supposition in locating these wells was perhaps there's coarse material deep within the aquifer, and that we could intercept that and use that aquifer. The next phase is to drill the wells, and there are different techniques used for sand and gravel versus the bedrock exploration. As Peter showed you before, commonly we bring in a track rig that it's a drive and wash technique where they drive casing and then for 5-foot intervals and then wash it out, and then you can look at the samples that you collect as you go down and document what the sand and gravel is like. And then when you get to the production well stage, you use a much larger version of this, basically, this rig. And in the bedrock exploration, we use an air rotary rig, which many of you have seen in front of people's houses drilling wells. It's an air percussion hammer that beats its way through the bedrock. And after a rod change, all the water gets blown out. And if it's a high-yielding well, it can be pretty exciting, because it all shoots out like they show here. And then we go, after we do all our test wells, we do preliminary testing. We look at the potential yield of each one and also do water quality sampling. And then we select the location to develop production wells. In this case, it's a sand and gravel well in which they're installing the screen section. I believe this is a 24-inch diameter well. It was up in Rochester in a supply that we developed, and the wells has the potential of 1,500 GPM. After the well's been constructed, we, in order to satisfy the DES regulations, the New Hampshire DES regulations, we have to do a 5-day pumping test, and through that we are able to determine the safe yield of the well and also do a more comprehensive water quality sampling of the wells. And during the pumping test, we monitor off-site wells as well as on-site wells to make sure that we don't have any adverse impacts to adjoining property owners or to wetlands that may be in the area studied. This just shows some pictures of a pumping test. Maybe some of you have seen things like this before. You have a discharge pipe that typically you try to take to a surface water body. And then this shows one of our guys putting a pressure transducer into a monitoring well, and it monitors pressure variations within the water and within the well, and then you can calculate the water level within that well and we monitor before, during, and after the pumping test, so we get ambient conditions as well as the impacts during the pumping test. And we also monitor any streams that are nearby to see if there are any changes in the flow of the stream during the pumping test. This shows a graph that we obtained from a pumping test, and it shows pre-pumping is relatively flat except for a small step test that we did. Then we turn the well on and the water goes down. We had to reduce the yield in this case, and through the 5 days it started to reach an equilibrium and level out here. Of course, then when you turn it off, all the well starts to recover at a certain rate. And by looking at this data within the pumping wells and also in the adjoining monitoring wells, such as the monitoring wells around the outside, you can create a groundwater contour map that shows the amount of drawdown at the end of the pumping. And this gives you an idea of how much impact will occur through your pumping. And Peter has already mentioned that in relation to the Bennett well. The other thing that you can do is do numerical models for the aquifer based on your pumping test data. And basically you create a three-dimensional model on the computer that's created of a series of grids in 3 dimensions, and you assign different hydrologic parameters to each one of those cells. And then you let the model run under certain precipitation conditions. You start off by calibrating it against your pumping test data, and then you can run different simulations. And in the case of our state, they require that you run it for 180 days with no recharge and see what the impacts are at that point. And then by doing that, you define an area of contribution. And this shows flow lines of the groundwater during the 180 day simulation. And so you can see that beyond the flow lines here, the water's not flowing toward the well anymore. So you can define the area of contribution numerically, and then by going up gradient from that to the groundwater divides, the surface water divides, you can define the wellhead protection area for a well. And of course, then you look at the land uses within that area of contribution and make sure that there won't be any adverse impacts for your pumping, either on their monitoring wells, other wells within the area, water use wells within the area, or through adverse land uses. And I will turn it back to Mike at this point.
Is that your last slide? So
Yes,
I'm
it
not
is.
going to advance anything? Okay. Essentially, just full circle, come back to me. I mentioned at the beginning that our involvement is really the design of any infrastructure, so that if Emory and Garrett is successful in locating a viable groundwater supply, then the next phase would be the design and construction of a pumping station. This is a typical pumping station. So we'd be involved in that aspect of it. And we'll be working with the town, with Emory and Garrett through this process. And that really wraps up the presentation, and open it to any questions. not even gonna touch that.
I have a question. Early on in the presentation, I think it was Peter, that you were talking about how they removed the silt after a couple years.
Yes.
What do they do with that silt, and is that like sludge or?
No, it's just, they actually just use it as topsoil around town.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's just silt from the river. They
Right.
pump the river during springtime, and it's a bit siltier then, so that silt ends up on that, on the pit floor.
And they just use it throughout town for different projects?
Yeah.
All right, Brian, and then Dana.
I'll wait, I'm still digesting.
Okay,
I
Dana?
just had Science 101.
That's right.
Water sciences.
Can you break down for us the different phases in the sense of cost and what the overall cost of this project would be?
Well,
I just got it, so I haven't read it.
okay, there are two parts to it. One is the artificial recharge, and the part that we've have costed out is the part that leads to a pilot test permit, and I think our costs are. I can't remember now, actually. I don't have the costs here. I think it's 38,000 or something to get to a pilot test permit. And okay, thank you. Okay, 36,400.
23 and 36.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So we have that information here, but I prefer that we can speak about it publicly so that the public will all.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. So 36,400 gets you up to 36,400 gets you to a pilot test permit, which enables you to see whether the artificial recharge system is going to work. For the finding new sources of groundwater, John went over the several different phases. And at each phase, there's a point at which you, the council, gets to see, should we proceed further with this? Should we proceed further in groundwater, say development zone A or B or C, depending upon how far it is from your current system or what kinds of yields we might expect.
So we get to pick, when you get to a certain point,
Yeah.
you could say, these are the five spots we've looked at and think have potential. Which one do you want to go further?
Yeah, there we go. So there are about 4 points at which you help us to decide, or we help you to make up your minds as to where to go from there.
Okay.
And at each point, for instance, John talked about the phase 1. We won't actually have drilled any holes in the ground at that point.
Right,
But we'll tell you where the zones are.
right.
So when you do the test well, then you get a sense of how much water that is possible there, but you still haven't done the pumping test, which is what gives you the real yield.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps George could answer this, I'm not sure, Chair. Where are these funds coming from?
So we come from the capital improvements or the water
General fund
Water
balance. on
general fund balancing.
Thank you.
Brian?
On the artificial recharge project, the cover slide talked about spruce hole and then mounding.
Yes.
So mounding sounds like a problem. Am I wrong?
Well, it depends. It so happens that at the Bennett well site, the water table's down about 20 feet. So if you had a mound of 4 or 5 feet, you'd never see it. It wouldn't be a problem.
So can you just describe what mounding is?
Okay, so when you pump a well, the water level not only in the well goes down, but also it goes down in the aquifer, and it's what's called a cone of depression. So if you're pouring water onto the ground, then it makes a mound at the water table. The water table becomes a mound where you pour it on.
So that would be an issue if you only had 5 feet to the water
It would-
level, because you'd be making a lake,
Yes.
basically, or a
Yeah,
puddle
you
or
could,
something.
yes, you could make a lake. Thank you.
And the existing, on the 2 ways to get the water from the river to the site,
Yes.
one of them is through property that we don't own.
That's
One of
correct.
them is the existing system, existing line that we have, I believe.
Well, that's not strictly true, because either case, it would involve a separate pipeline pumping river water towards the Bennett well.
Well, if we're not using the, well, I'm not sure how the system works. Okay.
Can I interject with something there?
Yeah.
The artificial recharge project that was done before, the way you did it
Oh,
before,
that's right,
was
yes.
through your existing lines because it was treated water,
Yep.
potable water from the treatment plant.
Thank you,
What
yes.
we're talking about here is pumping water directly out of the river and putting it onto the aquifer, so that's raw, untreated water. It
Okay.
can't be mixed in your existing lines. You'd have to have a new dedicated line.
Okay. Then, in terms of the Lee alternative,
Yes?
I know a straight line's always nice, but there's a really short line from the river to the road. And then you could run along the road, and it wouldn't be much more different. I'm just
you
wondering how
could do
you go
that.
about getting permission. Is that in your cost estimates to get permission from all the landowners? 'Cause I know we
Well-
own some of the land in Lee and Durham, but the majority of it's, I don't believe is publicly owned.
Yes, part of that process would be handled by the town. George and we have talked about it. So we would handle the kind of technical sides, but the town would handle the getting of the getting of
Is it
permissions.
feasible since it's just temporary above ground lines, for it to run along a road?
Yes, either would be feasible.
I'm just trying to figure out if
Yeah.
we're gonna have another $50,000 of cost, because landowners are gonna want, not necessarily give it to us for free.
Yeah, that's part of task one, is to look into the whole feasibility to see if it's even possible to do this in Lee and run a pipe from that point to
Yeah.
the well. And we've just shown a straight line because that's the simplest thing to do at this point.
Right.
That's an engineer's favorite.
That's right.
Straight line.
Straight line is the shortest thing.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah.
And we see that as being a key point in the whole thing. Can we do it from Lee? Because it's so much shorter. And if we can, then that would be good.
And that's why it's task one. Let's deal with that first.
And then one last question about the recharges. With Spruce Hole, why did they decide to go with recharging Spruce Hole?
Well, the reason we brought up Spruce Hole is just because Tom Ballestero, who is on the project team, they did a pump test and analysis of the Spruce Hole aquifer, which is a sand and gravel aquifer around that Spruce Hole bog, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I've been on the bog.
And the whole purpose of that was to see how much that aquifer could yield for the town of Durham. As part of that, they also looked into artificial recharge and actually created a three-dimensional groundwater model like Peter and John were talking about, and looked at would artificial recharge work. So I think it was brought up as an example of
Yeah.
where somebody on the team has looked at it and decided that it would work and it would work well in that instance.
Thanks.
Are you using, I saw an aerial photo in your presentation. Now, would you be doing any more aerial photos of Newmarket, or in your exploration?
Those are available aerial photographs. We don't take those for the project.
Okay, but
They
they're
can be-
already-
They can be purchased through different sources.
Okay, and
Yep.
what do you, just help me out being a layman, what do you see in an aerial photo that, I mean, I liked the part where you showed the line and how you could tell,
Yeah, the fault.
right,
Yeah. The same thing can be done with aerial photographs. Quite often, the linear features are associated with discoloration. You can see actual changes. There'll be darker areas. Sometimes the lineaments are associated with swales or different vegetation changes. So you can see that. But we can also take low-altitude photographs and look at them under a stereo viewer. So it gives you the impression of 3 dimensions. So then it's like like looking down on the ground surface, and then you can clearly see the elevation changes on the photographs. But a lot of it's through tonal variations. You can actually see the lineaments. And the data from that is combined with the data from the topographic analysis, the DEM analysis, the Landsat, and as I said before, they're all laid on top of each other, and we select the lineaments that have multiple platforms, coincident lineaments from multiple platforms. So some of the lineaments you draw, like on an aerial photograph, will just be filtered out through this process because they're not significant.
Or one may be a fence.
Right,
You know?
yeah, like a fence line's not going to show up on a topographic map or the other images, so that won't be a coincident lineament when you put them all together. That's why we do multiple platforms in part.
Councilor Wilford Hamel?
Yes, I'm searching for terminology that you can probably help me with. Excuse me. It has to do with the DES Water Bureau problems they've had, an unsettled problem about pumping out of the Lamprey. I'm searching for that term.
In-stream flow?
In-stream flow.
Is this going to have anything to do eventually with the
Yes, it is.
you people? Or,
Yeah, we were talking today.
I mean, midway with the whole project?
Yes, yes. We've actually spoken to DES some now, and we've told them that what we want to do is to essentially skim off the water at high water times and put it into the aquifer and not pump it all from the river during the low water times. And it's the low water times that are critical for in-stream flow.
So one of the reasons we have Tom Ballestero on our team is he is part of the, is it okay if I don't stand up at the podium?
I just don't think the people at home will hear you.
One of the reasons we have Tom Ballestero, who's a professor at UNH, on the team is he's working with Normando Associates, and they are the contractor working for DES on pilot in-stream flow studies on the Lamprey River and the Sauhegan River. So he's very involved with the whole in-stream flow issue, knows all the players. Yes, they're doing a pilot study on the Lamprey right now on the designated section, which is in Lee and Durham. So where we're talking about withdrawing water from the Lamprey is in that designated section where the in-stream flow rules will apply. And so we have to deal with that. But as Peter was just saying, if we're taking water off at the really high flows when they're not as concerned about it as opposed to the low flows, then it's okay. Preliminarily discussing it with DES, they have no problem with the concept. The problem would be when the flows start to get low and you start to get concerns about the aquatic life, fish, wetlands, then they don't want you taking more water and lowering it more and endangering that aquatic life. So that's when we wouldn't want to pump. Does that answer your question?
Other than, as long as it's doing high water, it's,
Right.
DES has already confirmed this, I mean, you've already,
I mean, we've touched bases with them. I mean, they haven't said, yeah, go ahead. I mean, we have a lot of work to do as part of this project to make sure that it's going to be okay. But in the basic concept of taking it when the flows are high, yeah, they say, yeah, we don't see a problem with that. Keep us informed, let us know how it goes.
thank you.
I have a question. When you're pumping the raw water into the aquifer, I'm assuming we're testing the water coming out the other end. What happens if the quality changes? Not for the,
Well, part of the whole process of testing this is to see just what happens. For instance, the bench scale tests that will be done at Bowdoin College under Dr. Vasudevan.
All right.
Vasudevan.
when you say bench scale test.
Okay.
Take a cup of lamprey, cup of Bennett, mix together.
Take a cup of aquifer, okay? So
Yeah.
take a sample of the aquifer.
Yep.
And then take river water and apply it to that, and do tests on the water quality of the lamprey before you do that. Apply it to the aquifer material, and let's see what happens to it. What,
It's the same thing on a very tiny scale,
yes.
and the hypothesis would be that's what should happen on the bigger scale.
And then the pilot testing which we're working towards, would be to actually do a full-scale pilot, which would mean running that pipe maybe over land as part of the pilot test to pump water from the lamprey and put it onto the aquifer and pump it out of the Bennett well. Now, we know that this has been done already with treated water, and the problem was with disinfection byproducts,
Right.
which is from natural organic material in the water combining with chlorine to
Right.
form these disinfection byproducts. We also know that over in Dover, where they're pumping water from both the Isinglass River and the Bellamy River, they do it in two different rivers, very similar water qualities to the Lamprey River, also have high organics, so very similar water. We know that they have been doing this for 15 years, and no water quality problems coming out the well. And of course, we would keep track of that.
But, George, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really treat our well water, right? Or at least not very much.
We chlorinate and adjust the pH right now.
But it isn't like what we would have to do to the lamprey. So I'm just wondering, and if we do this pilot test and we find that the water quality changes, is what we have now still capable of treating the well water? Or is that another project?
This wouldn't be the water treatment plant wouldn't have anything to do with this.
Right, I know, but, so where do you treat the well water now? Where do you
Right at
treat
the
it?
well.
Right at the well, okay. So, what I'm saying is, if we are mixing the Lamprey River water with the aquifer water, and we find that, okay, it's usable, but now we need a whole different treatment system, is that a whole nother project?
Well, the basic idea is that the aquifer material itself acts as the treatment mechanism for the water pumped from the Lamprey River. Right now, the groundwater, the only reason you treat it, you're not removing anything, you're disinfecting it so that make sure there's no pathogens, no
Okay.
bacteria, no virus in it, and you're adding corrosion control, correct? To make sure that it doesn't corrode the inside of the pipes.
So we're assuming the ground is gonna treat it on its way down?
Yeah, and a for instance, or an example, is when Peter showed you that slide of the sand where he
Yep,
scraped it
yep.
away and showed you that silty material there, a very common treatment system in this state is a slow sand filter. And this is akin to a slow sand filter. And all a slow sand filter is about anywhere from 30 to 48 inches of sand. We're talking on the order of 20 feet of sand vertically, and then we're talking 300 or 400 feet horizontally before this water gets to the wellbore. So you have a lot of treatment that's going on, natural treatment, as it moves through that material that is going to take out any impurities in the Lamprey River. What we need to see is to make sure, as part of the pilot process, that things like you don't get organic color in the water that could make its way through the aquifer all the way to the well.
All right.
The anticipation is that, based on actual experience over in Dover with similar water quality, that no additional treatment will be necessary.
Okay, Counselor Hart?
I just have, so I think Counselor or Chairman Caprielli was getting at this, but I guess we are all kind of wondering what the risk might be to the aquifer system, since it is our water system right now, in addition to the Sewell well. From doing the pilot test, is there any risk that we could not be able to use that for any period of time, months or weeks? And then what time of year is this planning to happen?
I'll let Peter take that one.
What's the level of risk? Because of course there's risk.
The level of risk is actually very low, and I'll tell you why. That is that many public supply wells all over New England, to say only just locally, are located near rivers. And when you pump the well, when the well is pumped, the water is drawn in partly from the aquifer, partly into the aquifer by the pumping of the well directly from the river. And it's covered by a certain part of the law which was changed about 1985, the Safe Drinking Water Act. and it was called it was called groundwater under the direct influence of surface water. And what they found was that as long as you were 150 feet away from the surface water, there was no effect. There's no need to test for the surface water. In this case, we're several hundred feet more than that from the Bennett well to the recharge basin, so I think the risk is low.
Then what's the
But
timing? What's the timing?
The timing would, the timing of the first task, which is can we pump water from the river in Lee, is the one that I don't know. I can't help you on that one. But all the other things could take place. If everything goes right, then we could get a report in, a permit into the DES by this fall, and then it's possible that we could build a recharge basin probably the summer of 2007 and be pumping perhaps in spring of 2008. Those are actually, I don't know the answer to that, but that's an approximation anyway.
Okay, thank you. I did have questions about the other proposal, but I didn't want to mix them since it's enough information, so I'll wait
Okay.
unless we're done, unless the rest of the council is done with questions about the recharge.
Do you have a recharge question? Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is more related to the problematic area of from Lee to here to get the water. What kind of problems do you anticipate from the town of Lee, or is it more of a logistics trying to get the water here?
I don't quite know what's going to come up, but there is Lamprey River Advisory Board, and what we talked about with George and Tom Ballestero was that we would help prepare a letter that the town would send to the state concerning the current law that exists. It's a 1965 law, and asking the state for a legal opinion on whether that would be possible for Newmarket to take water from the Lamprey River in Lee as a first step. Then we'll need to go through the Lamprey River Advisory Board, and no doubt well, in fact, I think that board has some members from Lee in, and so there would be conversations between Newmarket and Lee, but also with this Lamprey River Board and the state. It would be
Is Lee
complex.
currently getting their water from the Lamprey now?
I don't think Lee has the public supply, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Lee does not have a public water supply. It's all in individual wells.
All individual wells, okay, so, all right, thank you.
But if I could add to that, the one thing that Tom Ballestero let us know today is that Lee does have a water board that's formed in the past few years. I don't know exactly when, but so we will be talking to them. The Lamprey River Advisory Committee was set up because the Lamprey is a designated river. It's protected under the state's River Management Protection Act. So they oversee the management plan for that. It's also protected in Durham and Lee, and actually further up under wild and scenic designation at the federal level. And that same advisory committee has the local management authority over that. So there's a town of Lee, and then there's this committee. We'll be talking to both as part of this process to see, is this feasible? Is this possible? Once you get over the permission and the legal things, he mentioned the laws of '65, which gives Newmarket the authority to take water from the Lamprey River. The legal interpretation that we need is, can you take it from the town of Lee? Sure, you can take it from the town of Newmarket because you do it now. So that's the legal interpretation that we need for there. Once we get through all that, then you get into the hard facts of where would the intake be, how would you do it, where would the pipeline go?
Is the water quality better in Lee? Is that why we're looking at it from that point, or?
Well, the major reason is because it's about half the distance. So that, you know, it would, that, let's say if you're talking a per foot cost, it's half the cost to get it from that point in Lee. And there's better water quality at that point in the Lamprey River than there is at the existing intake off of the treatment plant, because that's essentially a backwater. Before the McAllen Dam existed, that was the Piscassic River channel. But because of the McAllen Dam, that water is backed up in there. And the town of Newmarket did testing of water quality at that point and then out on the main stem. And that testing showed that there is better water quality in the Lamprey out on the main stem, the main channel, so that we would be taking it in Lee off of the main channel.
And at one point, George, were we talking about relocating the intake to another location prior to this conversation?
When we talked about upgrading the water treatment plant, we talked about looking at different intakes over in the main stem of the river, but nothing to do with recharge. We didn't talk about moving the location for recharge.
Okay, so what we're talking about tonight is not going to precipitate, or will it, at some point, a new water treatment plant somewhere down the road?
No, it's
We're
going in
looking
the other
to
direction.
Okay.
Find other sources.
Going in the other direction so we can find a better source, so we don't have to go in that direction, okay?
Yeah, I'm referring to the data that they collected as part of looking at that. That's useful in this process because we can see that the water quality actually was better in the main stem than it is at that existing intake spot.
How far is the main stem from us? Is it in Lee, or do we have another one somewhere closer to us?
Well, I'm not sure exactly where you tested it when you did that testing on the.
Tested the river over on North Main Street.
Behind Puzzles, down in the back?
Yeah, in that area
Okay,
where we did most of our testing. Then we did it up by the trestle. in
yeah,
Durham.
okay. All right, thank
Okay,
you.
Yeah.
Counselor Hurt, you want to?
Yeah, on the exploration and groundwater development program, the contract ranges up to $150,000, which is a little scary of a number. So I just want to make sure that I'm reading the phasing correctly. Basically, it'll be about $35,000 or $40,000 to get to the point where we, at phase 4, where the state's got a report and we've got some exploratory wells done on either sand and gravel or bedrock, which I guess at that point we'd know if we have a site that is worth investigating further and spending upwards of $100,000 to test the site. Is that an accurate representation?
I haven't added up the subtotal there, but yes, after phase 4, what we do is submit the results of our findings to that point to the state and get a preliminary approval for the well site. And that way we can eliminate any hurdles that'll come later on from the state. And it's just a question of then testing to determine what the safe yield is.
Would we have a sense of the safe yield before we went?
From the preliminary testing, yes. Yes,
you
with the
would-
test, at that point, you've already drilled test wells, and
Yep.
you've done at least some short-term pumping so that you know, and water quality sampling,
Yep.
so that you have a general idea of what or an estimate of what the potential yield will be from either the sand and gravel aquifer or the bedrock aquifer. So it'll give you something to base the decision whether to go forward or not.
And if we sign the contract and we get to phase 4 and we say we don't want to proceed with any of the sites because they weren't productive enough or weren't right quality,
Right,
there's
right.
no obligation financially to the companies to pay the rest of the contract.
That's right,
Okay.
yes.
And then just want to make sure because
Sure.
it's not often that we're asked to contract $100,000. And then the last question is timing for all of this. When are we going to have? When do you expect to get to phase 4?
Well, we have, was this included with your package? There, I don't know if you have a time
No.
scale or not.
No.
Maybe I'd be glad to leave this with you, but we have, Phase 1 would be completed in the middle of February. Phase 2 goes through the middle of April. Phase 3 to the middle of June, and then Phase 4 would be finished in the middle of July.
And the
Actual submission to the DES.
and then the permitting process with DES can be a long time?
Well, when you submit it's slightly burdensome, but it's not too bad. When you submit the preliminary report, there's about a 90-day period after that to notify. What you do is give an estimate of what you think the zone of impact will be in your preliminary report, and then you notify any adjoining towns that are within that area of contribution. You notify water users, both domestic and public water users within 1,000 feet of the well, and then they get a chance, and any other outside agencies get a chance for input. So what we typically do when we submit the report, we also do our notifications, and they have 45 days to request a hearing, a public hearing, and if they do that, then there's an extension on it. They get another, I believe it's 60 days approximately, to hold the hearing and then have their input. They can have written input to the state, and then the state has 45 days, I think it is after that, to reply back to us or the town.
This is the same process that USA Springs has been going through.
Yes, the permitting process. They're doing it for bottled water, so it's
But it's the same. It
more
doesn't.
prone to comments, but yes, it is the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same regulations, but it's the same concept.
Are the
where
regulations
you
more lax for municipal water supply?
No. The permitting, the ability for the public to have input is the same.
But what are the regulations that are different in general? I'm just curious.
I'm not that familiar with bottled water in this state. Do you know? I know that they have a public hearing, and that I don't know that they're significantly different, except that they have a public perception issue more than anything else.
That's fine.
But normally, we can go through the DES preliminary permitting and get an approval and comments back from them within about a 90-day period.
Thank you.
So unless you have some people that are really objecting to this, it shouldn't be an issue.
I have one last question. Are these two different, the exploration and the recharge, going to happen simultaneously?
Yes,
Yeah,
they will
okay.
be.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Are you all set?
I think Mr. Fillion has a question.
I guess the one number up there he put up, 27 million gallons per year. We were looking for like 150 million gallons per year to meet our, what we think our usage would be. But right now we're using, between 400 million a year at our rates. And I think he's kind of lower, that's all. 27 million.
Wouldn't that be just for the recharge?
That was a
That-
recharge.
Yeah, that was just for the pilot testing of the
Oh, okay.
recharge. And what we would like to, that's a kind of minimum value based upon the rates that George, he was using when he pumped the treated water from the treatment plant up there. So I know that gravel pit will take that amount of water. What we're going to do is experiment with different loading rates from the river. We think we should be able to get up to 1,000 gallons a minute into that gravel, so the numbers could be much higher. Thank you. Good question.
So I believe we would send this to the January business meeting to be voted on, to authorize the town administrator.
Yeah, generally. Yeah, because it's a workshop.
Yep.
Unless, I mean, I think this is a little unusual because there was a committee that did all the work
Right.
that we're probably kind of going, shouldn't we have a lot more questions? But you guys spent like 6 months working on this.
Yeah.
Getting to this point that after interviewing 3 firms and getting 8 proposals, so. But I mean, that's not, you're not going to do any work between now and January 7th, so I can't imagine much.
Right.
I'll make a motion to move it to the January business meeting for final action, both contracts.
Okay. Second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Erica, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Aye.
You have a question?
Aye.
We're in the middle of a motion, Dan.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Mr. Walker, did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question.
You were waving to me.
I was.
I'm waving back.
Can I speak?
Yes, sure.
Okay. I think we'd better start with the information that we have. We have a well now that was in a rock well. Produce about 800 gallons a minute, according to the tests that were done on it. It's just laying there, doing nothing.
Are you talking about Follett's Brook?
No, I'm not.
What are you talking about?
I'll talk about Follett's Brook next.
No, that's not on the subject, on the
I'm talking
agenda.
about a rock well in Newmarket that'll produce around 800 gallons a minute. I'd like
Okay,
to get some tests done on those wells, perhaps another test well put in beside it.
you know what? If you tell us what one it is, I bet you they'd be happy to do that in part of their exploration.
If I tell you where it is,
Yes.
well, I can't do that. The school can't tell me where they're gonna build a school, so I gotta get a permission from the people that own the well.
Okay. All right,
But those, I think that should be looked into, and perhaps another test well in the area.
okay,
Follett's Brook, next.
okay.
I'm not gonna be alone. We should be using the pumping station that we have. All our water depends on the 8-inch pipe, it's 2 miles long, and only, I don't know why nothing has ever happened to it. They blew the devil out of it, and it didn't break, putting that sewage line up there. And Follett's Brook water run through the treatment plant, perhaps with some more updating the plant, perhaps a coagulating basin put in. I think we can use that well.
Yeah.
Produce water from here or there.
And I believe we're meeting with DES on January 6th to talk about the holdup, so
The holdup on the
permitting,
Follett's Brook.
yes. All righty?
So, you got a section line down here on Lamprey River down there. If you want to recharge it, the wells up there, which is possible. I worked with the man that put the wells in, the recharge area in Dover, named Pete Bouchard. And we started those wells, the recharge there. And it does work. So if you want to take water out of Follett's Brook, take it out down here. I mean, Lamprey. The suction line's in, you can't get another permit, can you, Leo? You couldn't get up in the lee and get up water out of there. There'd be 900 people fighting against you, plus the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
That I go home.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Wrong again.
Okay.
Well,
So, gentlemen, we'll be voting to execute that on January 4th. It's that's 2005, right? Yeah, that's a Wednesday night, okay?
Okay?
All right.
Do we need to be there for that, or?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dana, we need more calendar.
I got it from
Sorry.
Just gonna give them a minute to.
I'm not sure if there's 2 positions for the NCDC. I don't think there is. That's a change from the first time, and
I'll let you decide, elaborate on that, so I don't.
I don't remember. I just,
He's postponed it
That's when we're gonna discuss it. But some other options have come up instead of. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is town council to consider nominations, appointments, and elections. The First one is an NCDC, 2 positions open, term expires December 2008. Brian seems to think that's 1 position that's open that expires December 2008.
It is one.
It is 1?
We've spent many minutes at the NCDC board double checking everybody's terms because there was a
Okay.
little confusion.
All right, and,
And Leo's our secretary, so.
I have a question. Yeah.
okay. And Michael Provost is still the only one that's applied. I think last time Brian Morrison thought someone he knew was interested, but we never received an application, so. Dana, you had a question?
Yes, it's been brought to my attention that the NCDC, Brian, you probably can answer this. NCDC bylaws state that you cannot have 3 terms consecutively, more than 3 terms. I believe this is Mike's going to be his 4th term.
The bylaws were changed this fall, again, from the revision that made that in statement. So that's no long, it exists, but it can be overridden by the board, by a supermajority vote of the board.
And that has already been done.
I don't think, did we do it for Mike?
Yeah, we did it.
I thought we did it for John Algren.
No, we did it for John.
Oh, okay, and Mike. And we did it because at the point we're at, in the process we're at, we didn't want to lose either one of their skills. John's attorney skills and Mike's skills as a Main Street coordinator in now 2
Right.
communities in New Hampshire. And
Yeah, they're
so-
both very good assets. I just didn't want to get into a situation where we had to go back and do something backwards again. Thank you for
Sure,
answering that.
you're welcome.
Counselor Jerry Hammond?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint Mike Provo to the term through December 2008 onto the NCDC.
I'm sorry, I'll second that.
Any discussion? Jen?
I just wanted to say that I did, part of the concern before was that the position was not posted, but I have
That's
seen
right.
I have seen the postings in
Okay.
town so that people had an opportunity to apply for this position if they wanted it.
Thanks. I knew there was something. Any other further discussion? Erica, can you call the roll, please?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Wolfenhamel?
Aye.
Counselor Glennon?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Caprio?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next one is the Veterans Memorial Trust Committee, and that term is going to expire in May 2008. Counselor Hamel, Jerry Hamel.
I'll make a motion to appoint Robert Gazda to the Veterans Memorial Committee. Term expires May 2008.
Second.
Second by Counselor Wolford Hamel. Any further discussion? Erica, can you call the roll?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Wolfenhamel?
Aye.
Counselor Glennon?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Caprio?
Aye. Thank you. Next item is planning board update. Is there any questions for Counselor Jarvis regarding her report?
Oh, very well done.
Thank you, John.
Let you off her easy this time, I guess, Jeff.
Other than one small little thing,
Okay.
the volume. It disappeared.
Yeah, this, the volume,
Yeah.
they're having problems with it, and they're trying to figure out what it is.
With
but-
the system?
Yeah,
Apparently it was
I was-
was recorded, but it was not being done on
It just makes me
TV.
mad.
I know. It's,
It's like $40,000 and
Mm.
it's not even a year old. Sorry, Dana. for interrupting.
What was
they're,
40,000?
The
who
whole
did we
system.
purchase it from? I
Or is it a
forget.
lease?
They're on them, so.
Yeah, and then it disappears sometimes.
It does?
It's happened to the planning board once. Once it happened to us, but it was done by error. They thought we were on break.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
and we didn't come back. But what happened to the planning board, it just all of a sudden disappeared, gone.
Okay, that is being taken, I've brought that up. Committee list got changed to January 18th workshop because Council Morrison is not here. Vote to release the amount of $35,000 from the open space funds to the school department for due diligence on the new property that they're looking at. So we need to vote to do that. Chris was here last week. Oh,
Make a motion to authorize the release of the $35,000 to support the school's due diligence in pursuit of a school location.
is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Dana. Any discussion?
Yeah, just, we, in our, if I may, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
In the pile of paper we got in our boxes tonight, there's a memo from Melody about the open space funding, and I'm gonna try to talk to her and run through some things, because, for example, it says right now we have that if we did all the projects we've lined up, we have a shortfall of $23,000, which is not insurmountable. And then the question that comes up there in my mind is, I don't see for the Rousseau property the resale of the house that we're hoping to do.
Right, that is-
even as a projection in
Yeah.
here. And and then the second part is, I don't see, for the Nostrum easement, and maybe Counselor Wilford Hamill has some knowledge here too, the Conservation Commission voted to contribute $75,000, but I think the town council voted to contribute $100,000 as well, and that's not in this list of projected expenses.
Yeah.
And-
That would be a problem.
And I know we did make that commitment at the recommendation of the Open Space Commission, so it wouldn't be a problem if we have the money from Rousseau. Nostrum was trying to close by the end of this year, but I think it's not going to until next year. But anyway, I guess it'll all be fine if we sell the Rousseau house and the school doesn't need the money right away. So I'm gonna try to talk to Melody about this, but we made the commitment to do that,
Right.
and we have the
Yeah.
money right now for that request, so I think we can do it.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
We both did at the same time.
Go ahead.
Council Hart, when you do have that discussion with Melody,
Yeah.
and we get a new projection and everything else, can we get copies of that? Can you request that she does give us updated versions, and to also include on that, you have that right there? Yeah, to revise the date. Well, actually, she's got a September 7th, '05 date on there.
That was,
She prepared this for Al
yeah,
originally.
Okay, so if we can have an updated, so we know which one is the old, which one's the new, without having to fuss through it all.
And then this seems to be implying that we haven't bought Rousseau yet. I mean, Zajic?
yeah.
Feshik.
Zajic.
I don't know if we've closed on that or not.
If we haven't, we
We don't really need it, do we?
might need to rediscuss that.
Yeah, I'll ask that question.
I think we did, though.
Okay. I just lost my pen.
Can borrow mine if you'd like.
No, I don't have it right, I just gotta hold on to it. Oh, here it is, I can feel it. Okay, so the motion was made, seconded, so we just need to vote.
Can I?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, John.
I think the reason that we got this copy of this memo that was originally for Al was I had asked Kathy for some information on how much money has already been allocated from open space for the purpose of new property for the school.
Yep.
And so she made a little note on the top, and I'm assuming that's a number that's, I'm assuming that's not a number that's already been spent.
No, because we already gave them, what, 30,000?
I think it was 30.
We already gave them 30.
For the first piece of property.
Right, and this is
For
30.
exploration. So this is 30 for the other piece of property. And does all of this come from their?
500,000.
Their
So this should be-
500,000, right.
This should be 420 after we vote.
Well,
It'll be 440.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, 440.
After we vote, it'll be 440.
I think what she did is she
Okay.
said 500 minus the 30 minus the 23,000 shortfall equals 450.
Got it.
Approximately
yeah.
400, and then we vote tonight for whatever,
Mm-hmm.
35, then it goes down.
Okay. So open
Hopefully we can
space,
figure out how to get the shortfall back.
Yeah.
Well, with the sale of the Russo property.
Yeah, although it's got to be in there, otherwise,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what, there's something weird about the math, sorry.
that's okay. So basically what, I mean, this is all going to be coming off, this is all coming off of the $500,000 that was earmarked for the school property. So this is all deleting from the money that they'll have to purchase property.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Erica, can you call the roll?
Counselor Hart?
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Wilson Hamel?
Aye.
Counselor Glennon?
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis?
Aye.
Counselor Caprielli?
Aye.
Just stole yours, I'm sorry.
The next item, just something I wanted to bring up, that, at the school board meeting last week, and I forget the woman's name, I feel terrible. She did a very nice presentation. Apparently, they're reading children's stories on Channel 13.
Oh, cool.
And she brought up that, you know, anybody that wants to volunteer was more than welcome, and Superintendent Murphy looked at me in the audience and said, well, maybe Mrs. Caprioli can pass that on to the town council. So I'm just letting you know that they're looking for volunteers to read stories on Channel 13, and I don't believe it's, well, sometimes it's live. I don't remember. I think sometimes, the first time they thought it was going to be live and it wound up not being live, but anyway. So I just told her I would share that. Now.
Newmarket reading time.
Yeah. Under old business and other business, I have two things to bring up, and then we can go around if you guys want. First of all, we need to have a discussion about rescinding our vote on the special election. And the reason for that is that we've had a few UNH students step up to the plate and commit to July 1st to be here for volunteering fire rescue. So at this point, I guess right now, the court date for FX to go to court for the special election is December 22nd, so we have to decide this tonight. Oh, yeah.
Tomorrow.
All right, and that, if it all passed and went through court, then we would not even get a meeting till March. I mean, a vote. So we might as well just wait till May and save the money,
Yeah, $7,000, isn't it?
something like that.
Are these students training for paramedics, or where are they in the process?
I think they're already trained. I think they're people that were at UNH
It'd be
as
nice if
students.
we
and
knew that before we.
Well, we didn't know, and it wasn't until it was publicized, so.
Can you just say that again about the UNH students? What's happened?
I guess some people that are students at UNH have volunteered to be on our.
Volunteers on the.
Volunteers, yeah, volunteer to be volunteers on fire rescue. Is Rick still out in the hall? Because we can have him come in and explain it. And they committed, I guess Rick asked them if they would commit to at least July 1st till our new budget season. And I guess they agreed.
How does that help us?
It's okay.
July 1st, we don't know.
No. They're going to volunteer until July 1st.
Until July 1st.
So as of, so can we ask Rick to just tell us?
Yeah, Rick, I was just explaining how you just had some students step up to the plate about volunteering and that they would commit till end of June or July 1st or.
We currently have some college students available in, Mr. Pelza's schedule has been available during the day, so.
Are
Well-
they trained, Rick?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yep, yeah, they're licensed
They're
EMTs.
licensed and everything? Okay,
EMTs,
and
yeah.
they're serving on the town of Durham now, but they're willing to also.
Well, they're on our department too.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Jen.
So our emergency need for full-time firefighters immediately has actually been put off to July 1st.
Well, things have improved a little bit.
So we have the coverage that we need during those, I mean, are these volunteers actually volunteering during the peak hours that we needed them?
They're not there 7 to 5, but they're there. They're helping out quite a bit.
We can meet the 2 in, 2 out.
No, we're covering the ambulance. We're taking care of the ambulance. We're not filling the engine.
Consider them to be mutual aid.
Okay.
But I guess what we're saying is if FX went to court tomorrow and the judge says, yes, you can have your special election, we wouldn't be able to do it till March because
Right.
of posting. So that would only give us 2 months.
Here's the thing, if they okay it and say it's March, and you have your meeting, it's gonna take at least a month before you can hire somebody. You're gonna know in May whether it would pass if you put it through the budget that way. And that'll give you, they wouldn't start till July, but it's gonna take that long to go through the whole process to hire them.
So this isn't, I guess there's still going to be, at some point, a discussion as to whether it's 2 or 4 for the May ballot. Something will be on the May ballot. Is that my understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we voted for 2, or is that just 2 for?
That was for the special
The
election
special.
for the short period of time.
That'd be all gone after today's vote if we decided.
Can I ask a question?
I just finished, can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Can I ask one more question? So they just appeared? Like, how did they, I mean, did we send, I'm just curious as to how did the word get out because of all the conversations in the paper and stuff that people then started volunteering, or were these people that were interested before but didn't come in? I'm just kind of
No.
curious as to how we got new people so quickly.
There's a couple individuals that are EMTs that are currently were working and aren't working.
I see, okay.
There's a couple students that, whether it's a new semester or what the deal is, they're more available now.
More schedules,
You
okay.
know,
They're probably seniors. They have much more reduced schedules.
So you have a commitment till July 1st from a few new people that joined, or a few
June,
people
we're
that
pretty good
opened
till
up?
June. We're
Okay.
pretty good till June.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Rick, in the proposal, the request for either 2 or 4, is it in this proposal?
The budget? Yes.
It is in here already?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I put it in. I don't think Al cut it.
Okay. So it's in there, so when we look at it, we'll see it there.
Yeah. I put it in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Counselor Hart, I'm sorry.
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, what's up? All right.
Thank you, Rick.
So I guess if everyone's okay with this, I need a motion to, is it rescind the proper word, the vote to have a special election?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
So right now, what we've done was send it out there, but it hasn't been approved or anything
Right, it
yet.
hasn't gone to court.
We haven't spent the money yet.
Well, we spent a little bit on FX, going, preparing the paperwork and stuff for court.
Right.
Legal.
Okay.
This thing created a lot of problems, and to see it just,
So, is it gonna be a motion or not?
Just for the record, it's your, or so that I understand, it's your recommendation that we wait until May.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the time, the amount of money you're gonna spend, and by the time you find out, in another month, you'll know,
Right.
is the way I look at it.
Okay.
I'll just say I'm a little reluctant. I'm not reluctant, but I'm a little bit irritated.
I was too.
I am too.
And I don't blame Rick. I think it's the town administrator's responsibility to understand the process it takes to get on the warrant. And he should have been better aware of the time it would have taken, because we wouldn't have wasted in some way the time we discussed at meetings about this. Although we would have had the same discussion probably whenever it was proposed. It just seems a little like someone, it should have been foreseen that we wouldn't have gotten to court until tomorrow, or at least until December. Anyway, so I'll make a motion to direct the town attorney to withdraw the request to court for a special town meeting.
I'll second it. Second, Counselor Jarvis, motion, Counselor Hart. Any further discussion? Jen?
No, sorry.
Okay. Erica, can you call the roll?
Counselor Hart,
Aye.
Counselor Jerry Hamel,
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel,
Aye.
Counselor Glennon,
Aye.
Counselor Jarvis,
Aye.
Counselor Campanelli.
Aye. Thank you.
Is someone going to call him in the first thing in the morning, like 8 a.m., 7 a.m.?
I've already had a
Oh.
discussion.
Good.
No, he means calling the attorney, right?
Oh, call
That's what I
the
meant.
attorney?
So he,
So we're
Is
not
that who-
paying court fees. while he
well,
sits
so we
there.
don't get to court and then get the
Yeah.
permission and then not do it.
Yeah.
He might
Someone,
wanna,
can someone just call me in the morning to do that, remind me?
Yeah.
What?
FX had asked me to accompany him to court tomorrow, so.
Oh, don't go. All right, you'll call FX?
I can make sure he knows that.
Okay. Thank you,
You
Rick.
should know in advance of being there.
Yeah.
Leave a message
Yeah, well, as
tonight.
soon as we can, yeah.
Madam
I wonder if I
Chair,
have his phone number.
in the discussion portion, I would like, if you as the chair, you already have done some of this, but to reiterate to the town administrator this dissatisfaction of this board in not having all the facts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, under old business. One more item that I had, and then we can go around the table. The Russo House, today, just so you know, I guess the heat went or something.
Yeah, want to touch on that for a minute?
Yeah. The good news is we're insured, and it wasn't that bad, but just wanted you guys to know about it.
One of the baseboards, yeah, the heat went out, it appears probably early last night, because it was on Monday. The toilet bowls and stuff weren't froze up solid, so that's why I feel either late yesterday or early last night, the heat went out. This morning when John went in to check the place, there was a burst baseboard pipe that was on a hardwood floor. And down in the basement, there's a room that's carpeted, which had quite a bit of water. So really, the carpet looks to be the only loss. We got the furnace fixed. It was the
The valve.
little computer part on the furnace that tells, I forget what they call it, but there's another name for it. We got that fixed, got the pipe fixed. The worst of it appeared to be the carpet. You've lost the carpet in the basement.
Thank you. Counselor Wilford Hamel?
Yeah, do we have any late interest on that, or interest at all,
Well,
for the price that we're asking?
I'll tell you this, somebody has approached Al, they came in, kind of, was trying to feel Al out about, purchase, and Al called me and I said, well, we have a process and they can submit, we gave it till the end of January? And
that.
we have a minimum that we're looking for, and, it doesn't, whatever they want to submit, they submit. And so, I think we have one interested person at this point.
With, for that price or less?
You don't know?
I don't know.
She
You-
suggested.
Oh, you don't know?
Yeah, she suggested they go through the process.
Oh, okay.
All right. Anybody have anything under new, old business or other business?
New business? Are we on new business?
Sure.
Other business.
Other business?
Go ahead, Wilford.
Okay, I don't want to step ahead of anybody.
Oh,
Nothing.
Can I just, before,
Sure.
look at the bottom of your agenda, on January 11th at 7 o'clock, we're having a non-meeting. I happened to look at the budget schedule, and that's also a budget night, so we'd be here anyway, and we're still gonna do it at 7. I don't wanna bring people in earlier.
What's the general topic?
It's time for me to start pulling you guys in as far as union negotiations go.
Thank you.
Yep. So please just make note of that. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wilfred. I just, oh,
So does that mean that
Okay.
this is going to, sorry, Wilfred, but does that mean this is going to extend past 10 PM, that we're just going to push everything back then?
no, that's only the budget, so it doesn't have to, it's the second week, so we don't have to stay any later than we want to.
Okay.
Go ahead, Wilfred.
Really? Three minor things here. The conservation would like to, is requesting to be put on the next workshop for a couple of ordinance enforcements subject.
For what? For ordinance?
Enforcement, or lack of,
Okay.
and I don't know if it bugs anybody, but I brought it up last meeting, having real estate signs all over town property. In fact, one of them is on a small, where the cannon is. It's a little monument square. And anyways, they're still there.
Okay.
Number 3 is, I'd like to ask Brian if it's permissible for him to discuss how we're doing on the Piscassic Greenway, you know, the remainder of the money that we need.
That's the project in Newfields and Newmarket. That's 330 acres, and we've worked with the town of Newfields. The Rockingham Land Trust has worked with the town of Newfields to put in applications to the drinking water supply land protection program, and the initial ranking was not as positive as we hoped, but I think the town is going to proceed with the application and hopes that projects, that it might get funded, that there might be some funding available. We are working on other grants with other state agencies and some foundations, and are still working on donations from private individuals. And we've gotten a really good response to our mailing to Newmarket and the region. A lot of Newmarket people contributed, so. But there's still quite a bit to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
How
By the end of
does it
January.
look? I mean,
I'm feeling pretty good because I think that some of the grants are going to come through.
yeah. When's the deadline? I don't remember.
End of January is the deadline that we'd want to have all the funding raised by, so we can acquire the property in April.
Oh. Boy,
that
you
way.
gotta get a move on.
I know. I got a lot of work left.
Did he
Thank
get a
you.
letter?
Every property owner in Newmarket got a letter, so some of you might remember it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just quickly, so these, since this is my first time around with the budget, I'm really looking forward to it. These are meetings with department heads at these times?
Yeah.
So
Approximately.
approximately, so then each department head will come in and give a brief overview of why they think they need the
Yep.
money that they need. Okay.
And this is the dates that we have the meetings. Like
Oh.
January 7th, Saturday all day, Wednesday, January 11th, Saturday, January 21st.
Right, which we have here, but
Yep.
so there are different times that we're meeting with the.
No, this
Okay,
is the,
right.
yeah. And generally, I don't know, have you seen this before?
I've seen the one from last year.
The whole book?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So you know that, like, this shows the lines and then
Right.
it gives explanations line by
Right.
line, okay. All right. Anybody else?
Make a motion when we adjourn?
I don't know, Jen looks like.
Second.
Thank you, Brian.
No, that was a look of
light.
excitement. It's only
Okay.
9 o'clock. It's
Is
good.
that one that's gonna be signed or?
Erica,
no
can
sign?
you call the roll? I think everyone signed except Brian Morrison.
Aye.
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 Jarvis?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, Marianne.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably one of these, don't thank her yet.
Oh, you gotta. I forgot to tell you something.
Sorry, we're out of meeting.
Well, no, it's not nothing to vote. It's just, we got the release from the Johnsons, and it's on file at the town clerk's office for the next 10 years.
We're all done.
We're all done.
Which items
did you not deal with tonight?
One we sent, that's going to the January workshop,
Okay.
and number 5
You
is
save
going to
any
the
of your-
January workshop because he wasn't here.